Okay, so thank you. It's now 6 p.m., September 27th, 2018, and this is a meeting on sharks at the Wellfleet Elementary School. I want to first start off saying that our town is very distraught and sad about the loss of Arthur Medici. It has affected all of us deeply and still does, still continues to. I wish to thank everyone, the surfing community, and the 3 off-duty lifeguards, our rescue squad, and all the members of the community that aided both Arthur and his future brother-in-law, Isaac Roca, that day. Tonight, we are here to discuss what happened and what may be done to improve safety on Cape Cod beaches. Our Director of Community Services, Suzanne Grout-Thomas, will present what is already in place and ideas we can work on. We also have Dan Hort, our Town Administrator, at the end. The 2 other select women that are here, Justina Carlson, Kathleen Bacon. I'm Janet Reinhardt. We have our Chief of Fire and Rescue, Chief Polly, and Chief of Police. Chief of Police is next to Suzanne, Chief Facette. And then we have representative experts that will answer questions and give a brief description of what they do. And I'm not sure what order they're in because I can't see them. So it is Andrea, you're first. Andrea Bogomolny is the chair of the Northwest Atlantic Seal Research Consortium out of Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. Then we have Cynthia Wigram. I can't see. And yeah, Cynthia Wigram is with the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy. David Pierce is with the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries. And Megan Winton is also, she is with UMass Dartmouth, PH candidate with the White Shark Conservancy. I will first open this up to our local community and surfers, and especially people who regularly use our waters. Then we will open the discussion to the members of the audience, all the members of the audience. Please be sure to come to the microphone, state your name and the town that you reside in. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Please do not repeat what has already been said. Lots to discuss. Please be civil. If you have a suggestion, you must also have a solution. Somewhat of a solution, how's that? Not a full solution, but an idea. We expect this meeting to last approximately 2 hours and end by 8 p.m. If we need to have additional forums, we will do so. And any questions that may come up after this or concerns, you can email townhall@wellfleetmass.org, whatever, go on our website. What's the website, Dan, they should email?
You can reach the select board at bos@wellfleet-ma.gov, or you can reach the town administrator's office, and I'll make sure the question gets to the proper person, at dan.hort, H-O-O-R-T, @wellfleet-ma.gov.
And this will be posted on our website. Just go to Town of Wellfleet. All right. Everybody have a seat, or do we need more seats? There's some seats up here if you want, over on that side. Philip, seat right up front. What do you want? Yeah, there's seats here. It's my friend. Okay, we'll open this up now with Ms. Thomas.
Thank you. In 1991, the town of Wellfleet created the position of beach administrator, and I was the first one, and I'm still here. My title has changed, but the management of the beach program remains my favorite part of my job. Good thing it's not 52 weeks a year, however. In 2012, after the shark bite in Truro, a regional group was created consisting of local beach managers, chiefs of police, fire chiefs, lifeguards, to talk about basically communication between the towns and protocol before, during, and after a shark sighting or a shark interaction with a human. So since that time, we have developed a regional approach to this. The harbor master in Chatham wrote a grant application to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We received $50,000. So all the shark signage, large and small, across the Cape is consistent with from one town to the next. And I don't know how many of you have bought a Wellfleet beach sticker, but these have been available since 2013. It's a Shark Smart brochure. So outreach, education is an overview. Wellfleet particularly has increased the type and the amount of training for lifeguards who are on duty for 10 weeks a year. We have always had first aid, CPR, and the basic water skills. But in the recent years, we've added training in the use of hemostatic bandages, which are literally bandages that stop the bleed, which is a national program now being sponsored by the Homeland Security. We added tourniquets to our lifeguard kits at the recommendation of one of the lifeguards who's actually in this room tonight. We added tourniquets. And we have the kind of combat tourniquets in our kits at each beach and on our ATV that allow one person to put a tourniquet on themselves if need be. You don't need two sets of hands to use these tourniquets. Annually, we have surf rescue training, and we go over the skills, anything that has been determined by the EMS over the previous winter that would allow us to upgrade our response to traumatic bleeding events. And we also are lucky in Wellfleet that the lifeguard program interacts successfully with the EMS. One or two of the firefighters come to our training every year. They go over first aid protocol, bleed training, radio procedures, so that the immediacy of response is enhanced by the interaction between our fire department and our lifeguards. In response to a shark sighting, we have a uniform response in that if a shark is reported to a lifeguard, a shark sighting, the lifeguard didn't see it, and it's just a person on the beach, there's one response. If it's a sighting by a person who the lifeguard knows are trained, either lifeguard or EMS, then the water is cleared for an hour. Now, is the water safe for 45 minutes later than it is an hour and 15 minutes later? Probably not, either more safe or less safe. But the point is to get the beach population to be aware that the sharks are present, that they need to follow the instructions of those people who are out there in order to not eliminate shark interactions, but to lessen the absolute number as much as possible. Annually, we participate in the Cape Cod Invitational Lifeguard Tournament, which is lifeguard teams from across the Cape and the South Shore. And for many years, almost 40 years, a couple of the events, you swam out half a mile and then swam around a buoy and came back in. We no longer swim out. We swim parallel to shore. Some of the towns, the first couple of years after the 2012 bite, were a little reluctant to come to an ocean beach. But with the new protocols and the new awareness, we have safely conducted our Cape Cod lifeguard competitions. 4 of our lifeguards are EMTs. So once again, the treatment that someone gets on the beach during those 5 to 6 minutes that it takes for the EMS people to get in the ambulance and drive to the beach is as good as it can be. We have a defibrillator on the beach. We have an ATV that can respond to an emergency with extra personnel. And just this week, on Monday at town meeting, the town meeting authorized the purchase of 4 new lifeguard chairs that will replace the ones made of wood. They're anodized aluminum. They're 5 feet higher vantage point for the lifeguards to see over the water. And we are hoping that this will give the people on the stands bigger and better opportunity to actually visually identify that there's a shark out there. I believe the percentage that was quoted to me is 90% of the time, great whites do not show a fin. They're submerged. And if the water is crystal clear, absolutely you can see the shark. But how many times have you gone to the beach and there's seaweed and there's chop and there's wind, and it's a challenge. So everything we do, we're increasing our ability to be aware of what's out there. And that's the best message we can do. We cannot put anything out there that will guarantee that you're never going to run into a shark, that no one will ever be attacked by a shark or tasted by a shark. My personal belief is most of the shark bites are mistakes. They think the person was a seal, which doesn't lessen the impact of the interaction. We can't change shark behavior. We can change human behavior through education, and that is what Wellfleet has been trying to do, both as an individual town and as a member of the regional shark working group. One of the things that benefits everybody is the creation and funding by the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy of a free app called Sharktivity. How many people have Sharktivity on their phones? Good. It's both Android and iOS, but we don't have any cell service on the beaches in Wellfleet. So people go to the beach and they get up to their cars and their phones start pinging because there's shark sightings reported. But when they were on the beach, they didn't get it. So right now, what Wellfleet's big goal is to increase communication from the beach to EMS and from the whole world to the beach. So cell service, phone service, and on a smaller level, increased radio transmission for EMS. And that's what we can promise that we will do. We will work on those things, and we will continue to be vigilant, and we'll continue to rely on the general public to educate themselves as much as possible, to listen when they're asked to get out of the water. And I am really impressed. The lifeguards blow those three blasts and people come out of the water. They are smart. They know what they're supposed to do. So we're relying on that, and we're going to continue to do the education and outreach and rely on the people who love the beach. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go, there are a number of seats up here if you want to sit. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 seats up front. Okay, so moving on. And Andrea, do you want to introduce yourself and tell people what you're involved with?
Sure, let's see if this works. You can hear me? Awesome, cool. I know I'm not very loud. My name is Andrea Bogomolny, and I'm here as the chair of the Northwest Atlantic Seal Research Consortium. I knew it.
Right to your mouth, yeah.
Let's see. I'm short and I'm not loud, but I will be tonight. Here we go. So my name is Andrea Bogomolny. I'm at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. It's where I'm based out of, but I'm here as the chair of the Northwest Atlantic Seal Research Consortium. And we're a really unique group of people with a lot of participants in different fields who've come together to try and address some of the issues with with rebounding seal populations. As you guys know, they're increasing. With that increase, a really great group of people in this entire community. We have over 200 participants from varying backgrounds, from fishermen to resource managers, scientists, students, anybody with an interest to try and understand the ecological role of seals. And that means, where do they go? What do they eat? Where do they live? What about their health? And it also includes how they interact with the world and ourselves. So that's the consortium. So it's this group of people that come together, and we are really trying to figure out how to find solutions, trying to do community science, and really to get to the point is that we're not seal advocates, we're advocates of science. We use science to solve problems and work together to find solutions. And it's been a really great way to get people to work together in very difficult situations and in conflict resolution type of situations as well. So that's who I am, and that's where I'm here representing. But my expertise, I guess, is hopefully communicating the science of a lot of different people. And there's people in this room who have that expertise as well. So I might call on them. They're here, but I'll do my best. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. I am Cynthia Wigren, CEO and co-founder of Atlantic White Shark Conservancy. We are a nonprofit organization that was established to fund white shark research. We work with town, state, and federal officials on improving public safety. And then we also share that information with the community through public education and outreach programs and at a shark center that we have in Chatham. So I appreciate the invite to be here tonight and to potentially answer questions that come up that are related to our organization.
I'm David Pierce. I'm the director of the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries and a Cape Cod resident, Sandwich, living there since 1972, and a frequenter of the beaches in Wellfleet as well as Chatham, all the Cape Cod beaches, so very familiar with the area, and also with white sharks, of course. Greg Scommel, Dr. Greg Scommel, who I think everyone knows or is aware of, he would have been here tonight, but he's at another white shark event. He's giving a presentation at the Natural History Museum over in Brewster, so his apologies for not being here, but he had a commitment that he could not break. We work very closely with the White Shark Conservancy, as Cynthia indicated. They have helped us tremendously over the last 5 years at least, helping to provide funds for the very important research we do regarding shark tagging and monitoring of their presence and other sorts of white shark research. By the way, there were copies of the division newsletter. I think I brought around 100 or so that's certainly not enough. And inside that newsletter, and you can also get the newsletter online. The most recent one, there is an article that provides an update on the great white research that we have been doing, the number of sharks tagged, some movement information, something that will be of use to you, I'm sure. So we have a Division of Marine Fisheries White Shark Research Program. Greg Scommel, of course, heads up that program. We have collaborators such as the Conservancy, and we're finishing a 5-year study, a population study, and the lady to my left, Megan, she'll highlight that in a moment. We work also very closely with SMAST and also with Megan and other professors at SMAST over in UMass Dartmouth. I believe Gavin Fay, Dr. Fay is here as well, who was very much involved working with Megan on her dissertation. So we're now working on the development of a research plan for the next 5 years or so, with a focus on increasing detection, with a focus on our trying to be more timely with regards to detecting the presence of white sharks, in hopes that we can continue to provide information to the towns, Wellfleet and New Orleans and Chatham and all the other towns, regarding where and when the sharks can be found, and hopefully in a timely way. So we're working on that. As soon as we have that research plan completed, we'll make it available to the public, so you'll have a better idea as to what exactly we are contemplating. Obviously, we have white sharks in great numbers off of our coast. I think around 320, 330 individual sharks have been identified. That's only those that have been seen and identified, so clearly there are more than that. But in terms of the numbers of white sharks, estimates, that's going to be Megan's responsibility as part of her dissertation. So I'll end there and turn to Megan.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Megan Winton. I am a PhD student at the School for Marine Science and Technology at UMass Dartmouth. And as part of my dissertation research, I am working on the white shark population study that's going on right now. We're wrapping up our last field season this year. As David, he did a really nice summary for me, so I don't really have to. We've identified over 300 individuals at this point, and we've tagged over 140 individuals. So we are getting a pretty good idea of when sharks are here, where they are when they're here. And we're out on the water a lot, so we're out twice a week from June until November. I really am just here to answer questions that you guys might have about any of our ongoing research, as well as just questions about white shark behavior off the Cape you might have. So I'll keep it short.
Okay, thank you. And now our town administrator, Dan Hort, will tell you about the meeting he had with the National Seashore this week. Last week, yeah.
Yep, there we go. Last Friday, representatives from Provincetown, Truro, Wellfleet, Eastham, and Chatham met with the Cape Cod National Seashore Superintendent Brian Karlstrom to discuss what we as Outer Cape communities thank you, are going to, what our response is, what we can do. I will say some of the areas that we focused on is communications. There has to be a way for someone when they are on the beaches in any of our communities be able to have cell phone service and be able to call when there's an emergency. In this day and age, there's got to be a way, and we're working to find a way to do that. We're also looking at having emergency call boxes. So if you see an emergency or something has come up and you don't have your phone with you, there's an emergency call box at every one of our beaches. That's a commitment that we're trying to do in Wellfleet, and I got the feeling that all of those communities were trying to do the same thing. The other thing that we talked about is the training of our first responders on how to respond to a shark bite. They're well trained now, but we have to keep emphasizing how this is different than anything they'll see. To make sure that they have the right equipment in front of them, they have the right training in front of them. We also want to do as much training as we can of our lifeguards and anyone else who wants to be involved, the surfing community, if you want to be involved and be able to have that knowledge, so if it's just you and a few friends and something happens, you know what to do. So it's really providing training to the people who might first have to respond, whether that's the professionals or whether that's a friend. And the last thing we want to do is continue to educate the public as much as possible on what you can do to avoid an interaction with a shark. And we always tell you we can never guarantee that you're going to be 100% safe. If we swim in our ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, anywhere up and down the East Coast, there is always a chance that you're going to have an interaction with a shark. So we want to tell you or educate you as much as possible on what you can do to avoid that. And it's not always going to be foolproof, because one of the things that they will tell you is don't swim in the water, in the early morning or in the late evening. That's a feeding time for sharks. And Mr. Medici, when he lost his life, was swimming and surfing in the middle of the day. So I can tell you to stay out of the water at dusk and at dawn, but that doesn't mean if you go in the water at noon that you're going to be safe. So we always want to preface everything we do with the fact of we can't make you 100% safe, but we can tell you how to improve your chances of avoiding an interaction with a shark.
Thank you. So now we're going to open it up to local surfers, local people who might want to make a comment or share an idea. Yeah, go ahead, Will. Although you're not that local, but yes, you were.
Good evening, and thank you all for showing up. My name is Willie Planachek. I'm a local on Cape Cod for too long. I am not affiliated nor educated in any ocean studies whatsoever. But what I have heard is you all seem to be reacting to when the sharks are here. I have a shark deterrent proposal that I've dropped off for you to preview, and I'm currently working with Rhonda Robeson. You might know her name. She is the Department Manager of Earth Science Laboratory in the University of California, Santa Cruz, Marine Division. I have been in touch with her, and she asked me for the narrative that I've placed in front of, on the table there for you to check out. What my proposal is a deterrent, is to change the interest in the instincts of the shark, not his location. Well, it is twofold. By using a armband and ultrasonic sounds and LED brightness. Sharks have 10 times our vision, and their hearing is capable of hearing a splash 800 feet away, which is their trigger for prey. So that's all well and good, but they depend upon the last 50 feet of an attack on a prey. The shark uses only its vision, which is the LED armband or footband and a bright light. Between the two, I think you have two layers. You have an ultrasonic pulse from the armband. You measure that, and that's easy to be tested in a tank and so forth, and which one will irritate a shark. If you irritate the shark's inner ear chamber, you will confuse him in his balance, just like our ears. It'll interrupt his balance in an attack. He will feel unfamiliar, and if he gets close enough to have the light penetrate him, because he has deep sea vision, I think the two of them will make him somewhat very unwelcome to the waters. He'll just move on and go to somewhere he's more accustomed to. So in let's see, just in closing, you've probably all heard of pingers. They're being used in California on nets and so forth. It's kind of the same technology that's successful at the moment. But what I'm saying is, don't rely on changing the shark's behavior, as you have said. Let's change our behavior and make it on the arm or on the foot, so even when you're waist deep in water, you have a signal going out. And don't forget, you have 200 swimmers in one area. You'll have that'll be a very, very confusing message to a shark. You have 200 different frequencies. The armband should come in 10 different frequencies just to have a complete puzzle for the shark to be able to, his balance will be off. I just think he's going to go elsewhere. So the technology is there. I'm waiting for California to get back, and I will keep you updated.
Okay, so the technology's there, but it's not available yet.
It is not
Okay,
yet.
that's why I just want to clarify that.
It's
Good.
an easy test. You can test it in the tank, as it's spelled out in my narrative. It's an easy test in the tank for light and ultrasound. Then you can move it to the, a harbor. And also all the harbor buoys will also have this technology. So you have your buoys for swimming, you have your outer buoys, moorings, swimmers. I don't think they're going to challenge it. I think they're going to feel too uncomfortable and unbalanced.
Good.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Anyone else from Wellfleet?
From Wellfleet, I'd like to make a comment.
Okay, wait. Okay, so you came a little bit late. Please state your name and where you live.
I'm Dave Pike. I'm from Wellfleet. Didn't come late, but I moved up.
Okay, sorry.
And I completely agree with this gentleman right here, except... the microphone? Sorry. My purpose in life is long-distance ocean swimming and somewhat being on a board of some sort. But anyways, long-distance swimming, I've spent 40 years being a lifeguard. Problem with what you're just saying, and I'm not... Oh, sorry, problem with what you're saying. And
Even more, right there.
I am so sorry. The problem that I understand, and I may be incorrect with what you're saying, is that if I wear one of these devices and I go swimming, and you go swimming with me, I will attract sharks to a certain degree, and then they'll attack you, not me, because I have this thing on my, but yeah. So I'd like to suggest, and I suspect that a whole lot of you, maybe most of you, have the same idea, that we should do a drone technology. We should put out drones that have pattern recognition, they're not terribly expensive, that can look down. Been a lifeguard, if you look out on the water and see a fin, that's one thing. If you can look from the top down, that's so much better. And technology today will allow you to look further than your eye can do. So I think that's inexpensive, and I think that we ought to do that right away. Of course, you have to have all these people that can run this thing, and I'm sure that that's a difficult thing to happen, but I think it's cheap, and I think we should do it now. We should have done it 10 years ago. Sorry.
That's fine. That's no problem. So does Suzanne want to address that? Because we've looked into it a bit, and it's not as cheap as we thought it would be, and it's not, the visibility isn't always as good. Is that a fair way of saying that, Suzanne?
I think it is a fair statement. The other issue is the 10-ton-plus miles that we need to cover in Wellfleet. I'm not sure how many drones it would take and how many operators it would take, and totally something that we should look into, but can't make a final judgment until we've done some research.
Yep. Yes, Mr. Hort?
So if I can speak to that as well, we're saddened by the loss of life of Arthur here in Wellfleet, but we don't look at this as just a Wellfleet problem. So we definitely, a shark doesn't know our boundaries of our towns. So we look at this as something that's got to be a solution really with all of the Cape towns and with the National Seashore. So when we hear possible solutions like we're coming forward with this evening, what we're going to hope to do is take that back with the towns and the seashore and figure out which ones are the most viable. We have to do research on it to see what the fallbacks, what will work, what won't work. I've heard of netting being used. That really only works if you have a cove. So there's lots of possibilities, but there are things that we won't know about that we want to hear from you. And then as a group of communities, we have to find things to help make people safer.
Good, thank you. Microphone and state your name and residence, please.
Yeah, I'm Gayle Ferguson. I live in Wellfleet, and I want to share an observation, but I really want to put it in the form of a question to the experts who are here. I like to swim at Newcomb. This summer I tried to go in every day. And it's over the past few years I've been observing that more and more sharks seem to be making a trip up, and I'm imagining they're coming up from the large colony in Chatham. They seem to come up early in the day and go back later in the day. I'm imagining that they're going to Truro or Race Point. And I think that this is part of the problem. I think, if I said sharks, I meant seals. The seals are attracting the sharks. They're bringing them into the swimming areas. And I imagine that this pattern has to be disrupted. Now, I know that the Marine Mammal Protection Act probably makes it difficult to do that, but I'm wondering what the panel thinks about my observation and my concern about that colony in Chatham.
Sure. So we have seals across the Cape, as you all know, and we do have one of the largest haul-out sites at Monomoy, which is near Chatham, which is protected area. It's U.S. Fish and Wildlife, so it's one of their favorite places to be where they're not disturbed by humans. And we have several large haul-out sites on the national seashore as well for the same reason. So we have large High Head, Head of the Meadow, that whole area when the bars form are great protected areas for seals. So those are the preferred places that they are. And there are seals that are also on their way up to Provincetown as well. So you are correct in that they're seals. In terms of their movement, that's something that we need more information on about what seal is going where, what individual, or the number of animals that are transitioning between those separate haul-outs, not populations, but haul-outs. So yes, there are animals that are going, we do believe, from north to south, that the whole Cape and that whole area where they are able to, what we say, haul out or come to the beach is where they're going to be. So yes, hope that helps answer it.
Sorta. Okay.
Hello, my name is Lori Vogt, and I am from Eastham. I'd like to read a letter that my husband and I wrote to some government officials, please. As summer residents of the Outer Cape for more than 60 years, and the parents of 4 children who work and continue to work as ocean lifeguards on the Outer Cape, we are writing to address this critical public safety issue that has arisen on the oceanside and bayside beaches in Wellfleet, Provincetown, Truro, Eastham, Orleans, and Chatham, and which will soon affect the remaining towns on Cape Cod. And in the future, all of the coastal towns of the Commonwealth if the government does not act immediately to protect the citizens of Massachusetts. Government policies enacted to protect seals and white sharks have resulted in tens of thousands of seals colonizing the Outer Cape beaches and white sharks infesting swimming areas on the oceanside beaches on the Outer Cape. On September 2018, white shark attack on Arthur Medici in Wellfleet, the August 2018 white shark attack on Dr. William Linton in Truro, the 12/12 white shark attack on Chris Myers in Truro, and the August 2017 white shark attack on Cleveland Bigelow and Marconi Beach in Wellfleet are the results of misguided and outdated government policies. White shark attacks on seals swimming amongst crowds of people have been well documented at Nassau Beach in Orleans during the summer of 2018 and 2017. Just an example, on August 15th at Nassau Beach in Orleans, 2 white sharks attacked 2 seals in waist-deep water right in front of a lifeguard chair, where the lifeguard had been standing 5 minutes earlier. On September 6th, 10 white sharks were spotted off of Nassau Beach alone. White shark attacks on seals adjacent to nearby swimmers on the Outer Cape are too numerous to count over the last few years. We have the most dangerous sharks in the ocean regularly swimming in the vicinity of anyone who swims at the Outer Cape Beach. At the same time, not one single government official has taken any meaningful action to provide for our safety and for the safety of our children, our family, and our friends. Instead, certain government officials have given pet names to white sharks and prioritized the lives and safety of sharks and seals over that of those who swim in the Cape waters. All of us, both individually and as a group, bear collective responsibility for the death of Arthur Medici. We all knew someone would be killed by a white shark on the Outer Cape, and yet we did nothing to prevent it. Few, if any, have spoken out about the threat to the lives and safety of those who use our seashore. While we know someone would be killed by a white shark, we just hoped it wasn't our child, our friend's child, or someone we knew who lost his or her life in a white shark attack. We can no longer tolerate the current government policies which have resulted in white sharks swimming amongst us on the Outer Cape. The current policies are incredibly dangerous, violate our constitutional rights to life, liberty, and are contrary to the most basic reason for government in the first place, namely to provide the collective safety of the citizens. Any government which abdicates its responsibility to protect the safety of its citizens fails at its most fundamental level. As citizens of the Commonwealth, Commonwealth, we have the fundamental right to use the seashore, to swim in the water and not be attacked and seriously injured or killed by white sharks who gather to prey on thousands of seals who have colonized our beaches. Our government representatives have a moral, ethical, and constitutional responsibility to place the lives and safety of our children, families, and friends over those of sharks and seals. We need to remove those white sharks who threaten the lives and safety of the people who use our beaches on the Outer Cape. We also need to establish a plan to control the number of seals that are allowed on the Cape and to restrict where the colonized are located. The governor and the legislature must immediately act to lift the fishing ban on white sharks in the Massachusetts waters. The ban was enacted with no scientific data or information.
We do have a 2-minute time limit, and you're over it, so just please wrap it up.
Sure. The ban was enacted with no scientific data or information as to the number of white sharks in Massachusetts coastal waters. And now, as a result, we have shark-infested waters on the Cape. As a part-time resident of the Outer Cape for more than 60 years and have been parent of 4 children who love the Cape and swimming in the ocean, we encourage everyone who loves the Cape or enjoys swimming to speak out and defend your rights and the rights of your friends and neighbors. Lori and Brian Vogt. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Well, no. Yes. No. What is it going to be? I'm going to have somebody address it.
Well, that's a tough act to follow.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait a second, please. All right. Talking to the mic.
Yes, am I on?
Yes.
I have 2 questions relevant to some of what was just said. Excuse me, I'll be done in a minute. One is to the seal expert about the incidence of distemper in seals that has been reported, and there's been significant mortality. That's my first question. My second question has to do with what happens when you close the restaurant. Let's say we called or substantially reduced the seal population.
Close the restaurant.
Close the restaurant, in other words, or downsized it. This is to whichever shark expert can answer it, these questions. What is the life cycle of the sharks that are in our waters, and how long does it take them to break a routine? I don't mean their seasonal routine that has to do a bit with temperature of water and so forth, but if they've known that food is available in a place, how long does it take them to stop going there to find it? Because otherwise, the people that are in the water would, be a change of diet for them. So if those 2 questions could be answered, even if it's just we don't have the data yet, I'd appreciate it. And I'm Helen Miranda Wilson on the Select Board. I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself.
Could Cynthia, David, Megan answer that? Yeah. Or maybe give us a little seal biology?
Yeah, but I had a little trouble hearing the question. I think it was along the lines of how do the sharks move up and down the coast, and is there some expectation that perhaps they might change their movement patterns in the future, especially if there were fewer seals? No?
Also, what is their life expectancy? Is there any science on how long it takes them to break a feeding routine?
There's nothing that I'm aware of about how long it takes them to break a feeding routine, but white sharks, they have a very sort of notorious, glorious reputation, if you will, but they're big fish. So they are here, yes, because their food is here. White sharks can reach ages up to 70-plus years, we now know, so they're a very long-lived species. They mature really late, they're not very productive, and we saw really severe population declines in white sharks and a lot of other coastal shark species earlier in the century, or not this century, the previous century, but that is why there was a scientific basis for why white sharks are now a prohibited species and why a lot of protections went into place for white sharks and other species. We are starting to see populations come back. Depending on who you are, you think that's a good thing or a bad thing. But one thing I want to mention, there's a lot of talk about seal culls and what happens if you remove the seals from Cape Cod. But one thing, and Andrea can speak more to this than I can, those seals are part of a much larger population. So we're not just talking about the population of seals and sharks on Cape Cod, we're talking about a much larger population. So I'll let her talk more about that.
Yeah, let me get this closer so you guys can hear. That's absolutely right. From all the studies that have taken place, and I know that it's a controversial topic, but that's exactly right. These animals are part of a bigger system in the Northwest Atlantic. So we're talking 500,000 gray seals, for instance, and we also have harbor seals. So we have a larger population that we're talking about, not just Cape Cod seals or Wellfleet seals. So yes, absolutely. And then the other part to that, which I got excited about talking about, because you mentioned phocine distemper virus, which is something I'm very excited about, because it's what I study, and it is something that does affect seals heavily, and one of the reasons it does affect seals is because of the health of our ecosystem. So if seals are unhealthy, if they're exposed to contaminants or harmful algal toxins, they're more susceptible and they die. So this is what was seen in Europe when half the population of harbor seals died. So you're talking 20,000 dead seals on the beach, and I know that some of you are like, yes, that's great. But in the ecosystem itself, it has really tragic consequences to have one of those mesopredators completely gone. And that's part of the conversation of why we have these amazing protections set in place for these large predators like white sharks, marine mammals, large whales, is because they contribute to the ecosystem in ways that we had no idea about until they started coming back. So they provide nutrients to our oceans. They actually kind of regulate the fisheries that we want because they eat the predators of other fish. So there's other consequences that we really have to talk about when we talk about removing animals from a system. So getting that out of the way. In terms of what we know about phocine distemper virus right now in our population, it affects harbor seals more, and it's something to keep an eye out because it does mean something about the health of our system. And all of us should be aware of that. All of us love our oceans. And once those animals are dying, actually, we really need to pay attention. So that's the distemper part. And just to put it out there, you cannot get it. It's not contagious to humans, but it can transfer to animals. So just beware of your pets. I have to put that in there just in case. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can quickly add something, I apologize for having you stand there. I know you would like to speak. The previous speaker made a very important point that's I've always thought about because I have children that swim in the waters off of Wellfleet and Orleans and elsewhere, and that is lifeguards. I think she said that she has 4 children who might be lifeguards. Perhaps I've misunderstood. But anyways, children are in the water, so I can understand the passion for wanting to remove seals, wanting to remove the white sharks. It's understandable. I was at a meeting not too long ago on Nantucket where we talked about all the seals on Muskeget Island, never mind here, but off of Muskeget Island. It was a huge colony, and the discussion was along the lines of how can we reduce the number of seals, those who were present at the symposium, how can we reduce the number of seals on Muskeget so there would be less contamination of the land, and there are many issues. But it all comes back to the fact that there are federal laws that prevent the removal, the culling, whatever, of seals, and of course the protection for white sharks is federal as well. So there's nothing the Commonwealth of Massachusetts can do except to continue to do the research and continue to advise the cities and towns as to how to try to improve communication, public safety issues. It all comes down to the federal rules, which are not easy to change, and the minute one tries to change federal rules or law relative to seals, or white sharks for that matter, there are many, many advocates for don't make that change. So it's likely never going to happen, despite the fact that there has been a death. And of course, there's the fear that there could be more deaths in the future. No one knows, but the fear is there, and it's a legitimate fear. So that's the issue. There are federal restrictions that prevent any impact on these marine mammals, the seals, and also on the sharks.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Gayle Ferguson. I'm actually a resident of Brewster, but I am a partner in Pearl in Wellfleet, so I do enjoy usually Newcomb Hollow Beach very much. Unfortunately, I was there on the day that this occurred, and my boyfriend and I did help assist. I have to commend the town of Wellfleet for their lifeguards that were not on duty, but we've watched them all summer do an incredible job, and they were first responders on the site with the surgeon, I believe, that was there. doing everything they could. They were excellently trained, and so I just wanted to put that out there as a thank you to the town. I think everyone's kind of mentioned some things that I wanted to say, but whether it's the drones or the cell towers, my other thought was it's very hard to get far down on those beaches with the body. And it's a long way to carry it back. I think if there's an ATV in a shed at every single beach that's charged and ready to go with a stretcher capability on the back, it would be a lot of assistance because this is not going to stop. And I understand what you're saying, sir, about the seals. I just think because there's advocates to it doesn't mean we don't try. The seal population on the Cape is way out of control. They're eating all of our fish. Now they're eating our children. And I'm not, if you were standing there that day, you'd be fighting for it. This was a beautiful young man who lost his life because we've been sitting doing nothing. So I commend you for your letter. It was much more articulate. I did not plan on talking tonight, but if anyone, I'm sure lots of people in this audience were there that day. It was beyond frightening. That poor boy looked like a bomb went off on him. And no sharks or seals are worth a young man's life. They're just not.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Hort?
What I would like to, I hope that this meeting will not get into a debate of do we want to cull the seal population, do we want to find a way to get rid of the sharks. At this point, I don't think those are realistic solutions. It would take an act of Congress for that to occur. It would also take the seashore agreeing to let that happen, and having talked to the seashore, that is not going to happen. So if we want to have that conversation at some point, I'm more than willing to have a forum where we talk about that. But at this point, I don't think that's a realistic solution. And we really want to look at what is a realistic solution, and not even a solution, because as Selectman Bacon said the other night, there isn't any solution. But effective deterrence, effective things that we can do to prevent an interaction with a human and a shark. But I hope we don't turn this into a conversation or a discussion of how do we get rid of the seals or how do we get rid of the sharks. I think if that's a conversation that people want to have, I may not agree with it, but I'll help you every step of the way. It's not my job to only work on things that I agree with. And I'll be happy to be a part of it and have another forum where we could discuss that if the people would like.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ken Lockwood. I live here in Wellfleet. I'm concerned with saving lives. We don't have a problem with shark bites until someone gets bit. And once they get bit, we have to get them off the beach and get them somewhere. Now, in the sailing or in the boating industry, we have a VHF, UHF radios that we have on all of our boats for safety reasons. Now, I understand that there are 30 policemen that work in the Wellfleet town during the summer, all carry radios. If we could equip the lifeguards with VHF, UHF radios, you would get response time to the fire department, the police department, and whatever policeman in his car or on his bike would be available to town. Now, I only know this because I was a sailor for many years, and when you need a response from the Coast Guard, Channel 9, you would get them. They would pull everything out to make this happen. So my suggestion is maybe in the interim, while you try and perform the exercise to acquire communication devices, VHF, UHF radios are not that expensive. If you equip the lifeguard stands, people who work in the parking lots, it might just save a life.
Thank you. Chief Polly, will you address that, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair, I will. Just as a little background, the police and fire departments utilize an 800 megahertz radio system. It's basically used up and down the Cape. It's a series of repeaters that are set up and dispatch for police is out of Wellfleet Police Department, dispatch for fire is out of the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office in Bourne. It's a very robust system. system. It's old, but it works well. In fact, we have a backup system, which is a UHF system. So we use that as backup, and the lifeguards are equipped with UHF radios. They do have the ability to communicate with Wellfleet Police, Wellfleet Fire. All our vehicles, the police chief's vehicles, have the UHF radios in them also. So we're constantly monitoring that transmissions. The challenge is the dunes on the ocean side. You have dunes that, as most of you know, go 40, 50 feet in the air. So when you're on the beach and trying to get to, when you're working off a portable radio and trying to transmit a message, it is very difficult, and sometimes, I'll be frank, it's impossible. So what we're trying to do, or what we'd like to do is, and it's a project, believe it or not, that has been ongoing and was stepped up earlier this year between myself and the Director of Community Services, to look at doing a radio study for what we call repeaters. So each beach location would have a repeater, and utilizing a portable radio, the lifeguard or the parking attendant would be able to contact Wellfleet Police, lifeguards with a better quality transmission so that it is clearer, it is stronger. So we are looking at that right now, and actually we're in the process, I'm hoping within 90 days to have some better information as to costs and better coverage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Janet?
Yes.
Speak for a second. So I would also like to just mention, as the next speaker comes up, Lieutenant Governor Polito reached out to me today. Senator Sears' office has reached out to us, as has Representative Peake's office. They have heard what we need and what our issue is, and they have basically said, tell us what you need. Tell us what money you need to make this happen. So again, they look at it as a regional solution, and they are there to find out from us what we need to fund it so that we can make people safer when they're on their beaches and they can access their cell service. So there will be something in place, I guarantee you, and hesitant to say this, but I guarantee you by next summer, we will have some way of communication. My problem, my worry is that if the only communication we have is that we've really got our lifeguards set up so that they can reach anybody at any time, our lifeguards aren't on duty after Labor Day. And this accident happened after Labor Day. So we've really got to go one step further and make it so that the general public has access. And we will work nonstop to make that happen.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank the officials, Dan Horton, Suzanne, for hosting this meeting. My name is John Kartsunas, Wellfleet resident. I'm the father of 3 children, 2 of which have been lifeguards in the past, one a senior lifeguard. I've been surfing and swimming in the outer beaches for 35 years. I won't allow my kids to go in anymore. My kids are young adults. I have not allowed them to go in the water. My youngest daughter was present during Arthur Medici's fatal attack. It was horrific. She tried to help as best she could. We seem to forget that all these proposed solutions aside, we seem to forget what the elephant in the China room is, and that is the infestation of our waters by sharks and seals. The seals are polluting our waters. They have created colonies all up and down the outer Cape. The sharks are following the seals. Here on the Cape, sharks feed differently. Maybe the experts can help me out on this one. But we have been told by all the signage and the advice from all the experts to go in the water during the midday, avoid dawn and dusk, waist-deep water, clear water, stay on the sandbars, all of which, as previous speaker suggested, Mr. Medici did all of those things, and he was killed. The sharks seem to hang out on the side of the sandbars in deeper water, and they prey not from the deep up, but they prey sideways. We have a problem here, ladies and gentlemen, and the problem is man-made. It's caused by federal legislation that has brought about unintended consequences. The solutions that have been brought up so far, they're basically Band-Aids. If our Cape Cod beaches are to be utilized by people, something has to be done immediately, from the local level all the way up to the federal level. Otherwise, you can forget about the tourist industry here, you can forget about property values, and all the negative effects that come with people not coming here. For if I was a young father with children of 8, 10 years old, I would not let them wear a wristband with a beeping light. I would not.
So, excuse me, so thank you. We did just talk about seals and sharks, and that because they're protected under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, endangered species, it's not a quick solution. It would,
Understood.
I would say it would just, knowing our federal government, I would say it would take at least 3 years just to start it. So I appreciate, there's lots of people here who feel that way about
I think
sharks.
public safety is an important issue.
Yes,
And that's the role of government. Number one role of government is public safety. And that's what we have, not shark safety, not shark conservation, and I understand where some of the advocates on that side are coming from, but not to be at the expense of humans. And that's the issue here, and we have to address it. And I hope you all take it very seriously. Thank you.
Well, we have our representative Sarah Peak here, and also Leslie Sanborn from Julian Sears' office too, Senator Julian Sears. So maybe at the end of the program, they can address the seal and shark killing issue. It's not really culling, it's killing. So that's, yeah. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Rijn Curley. I'm from Wellfleet, and I just have a few things to say. Basically, we have failed as a community. We all knew that the risks were increasing out on the water, and we did very little to change except trying to get people to modify how they behave on the beach. There are steps that we could take and can take that will lessen it will decrease the time between the response times and reduce the risk of harm to the people that are out there. As a region, we cannot afford to continue as we have been. Before long, our tourist economy will no longer be its vitality will be gone. I know a lot of people don't really like tourists necessarily, but we really depend upon the tourist economy to power the economy here. There's only so much year-round work and year-round businesses that provide for the area around here. So, and basically, there's a few quick things that we could do because this is going to happen again, as it is right now. There's a few easy things. One is obviously ATVs out on the beach. We should also seriously consider, and I don't know why people are saying, oh, the lifeguards are off duty after Labor Day. There should be at least one beach in town that is patrolled in the shoulder seasons. It's a very simple modification, and it's a very simple modification. It will involve a little bit of extra staffing to man it, but we're just talking about one beach. It could be Newcomb's Hollows. That's the easiest one. That's the shortest dune, and it's easy to get to from the fire station and police station. Is the most conveniently located beach in the town. I do not like that our beaches are classified as remote. They are not. They are literally within minutes of everything in town. And yes, we all know that the seals are a problem, and no, nothing is going to change with them because of the Marine Mammal Protection Act. The only possible avenue of approach would be administering some form of birth control to the seals to reduce their population growth, because then you are not actively harming the animal itself. You're controlling its population rather than killing. So, and that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So the birth control idea has been brought up. Would any of our experts like to address that and how that works?
Here we go. I can try and address that with the data that we have. And again, I'm coming from the side of science, that if you have an animal in captivity, that's a possibility. But for wild animals, it hasn't been proven effective. The monitoring of it and the implementation, if you wanted to even try it, would involve so much money and so much time, and it just isn't feasible. And again, that's from the science perspective of it. So that's to answer that specific question. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Comstock. I live in Wellfleet, and I'm going to kind of take a different perspective on this, I guess, because I graduated with a degree in biology. Something I think that hasn't really been discussed is the fact that this is where these sharks and seals live, and we are sort of going into their homes. And when we're going into where they live, they don't know any better. Sharks aren't man-eaters. The seals aren't like getting out of control because they, want to take over our beaches and things like that. And so I think we just need to sort of humble ourselves and be aware that we are going into their homes and we're sort of being in their areas. They don't know any better. It's hard for them to tell the difference between a human and a seal. And so personally, just because I also am a large promoter, I guess, of conservation issues, I think something that could help would maybe be making more beaches sort of protected areas, which would also help with sandpiper populations, which I know there's a lot of fencing being put up for those. But if we create areas where humans aren't going, then the seal populations they don't particularly, not to anthropomorphize, but enjoy being around humans. We're kind of in their space. So I think if we created more space, obviously still leaving beaches open for tourists and things like that, but they might go there instead. And then the sharks would follow the seals, and there would be less sort of overlap between the seal habitat and the human habitat. If you went out into the woods in Yosemite and somebody got attacked by a bear, what are you going to say? They were out in the woods. They were in the bear's home. We're kind of doing the same thing here. And so I think if we just took like a decent, not like enough to affect tourism really, but I think that it would be cheaper. It would be better for the environment, and you wouldn't really have to worry about it as much anymore.
Thank you. Great island.
Yeah, good evening. My name's Scott Adams. I'm from Homer, Alaska. I'm one of your people that show up during the summer months, or the fall, or the spring. I have family live in Chatham for the last 30 plus years, and they have told me that the seal population has gone out of the way to where they find seals where they normally haven't been. I used to surf Nauset, and the only thing that I was concerned about was the cold water. But going down the beaches at this time, day and age, and you can't use your cell phone is ridiculous. The vast country of Alaska, we have communications almost every mile, and if not, we have emergency boxes. And I feel this was your responsibility to get it taken care of immediately.
Good.
As a town and as an area. This shouldn't be 90 days, we're going to check into it. You should be on the phone tomorrow with people in communications and have it done by next week. I also feel that the lifeguards should be here a longer period, as stated before, in the springtime and also in the fall. 2 weeks ago, it was 82 degrees. I was in the water then. My aunt won't go in the water anymore because there's too many seals, and she takes daily swims. So I think that I'd like to see a tagging program with the seals. See where they go, see where they venture, and how many disappear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Adam Lang. I'm a Cape Cod and commercial fishermen. Like some people before me, I want to praise the first responders from that day. And I want to chastise the government officials that are sitting behind these tables tonight that are telling us, we the people, we can't do anything in our own environment with sharks and seals, all right? It's a republic. We have elected officials, and we can change things, all right? I'm not buying it. From the Massachusetts Fisheries
I'm going to excuse it, but we have been saying we are doing something to change what you might be proposing about sharks and seals. Start a petition. Start a petition in this room tonight, but not on my time, not now. But it takes, it takes an act of Congress. It's not going to happen, and we're really focusing on quicker solutions, quicker communication.
Okay, I appreciate that, and that's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Quickly, I'm going to fast forward through most of this. I'll be done quick. I want to remind our elected officials that the death of 26-year-old Arthur Medici by shark on September 15th was not his fault. It was ours. He was following posted guidelines to swim midday and close to shore. Our inaction caused his death. Shark experts quickly announced that the shark may have mistaken Arthur for a seal. I think the seal population is where we need to focus. The current seal overpopulation has been years in the making, in a result of animal rights groups and politicians.
Okay, so this has all been discussed before, and we still have a lot of people in line. So we've talked about seals and sharks, and people don't like them.
Finish up real quick.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. In fact, our own Cape and Island State Senator Julian Sear was quoted 2 days after the fatal shark attack, saying the situation is, quote, really terrifying, followed quickly with culling the seals is not an option. I think it is an option, and thank you for suggesting that we can take action.
Yep, you're welcome. And I want to also clarify something, and anybody who is on the beach can correct me if I'm wrong. Mr. Medici was further out. He wasn't that close to shore. He was a little bit beyond the waves. There's actually photographs of where they were. So it's a real hard call when you're surfing, when you're boogie boarding, that he had been coming in and out of shore, having a great time. I also think everyone should know that he and his future brother-in-law were having an incredible time. They were putting on a show for people. People along the beach, surfers were stopping to look at them. They were really like flipping, spinning around. But they had then stopped, and they floated out a little further, and they were further away than everybody. So I don't know the exact footage of where they were. I've heard 30 yards, 300 feet. It's all about the same. But they were further off the beach than everyone else was. Good. Thank you.
Hi, John Arsenault, local resident. I'd like to thank town for holding this forum and for bringing in the scientific community. I'd also like for all the locals that are in here to notice how much media is here. Everybody is watching this. I'd like to take this conversation from a more economic standpoint. They are watching us. And if we don't show them, the tourist community, people who travel from all over to come to our town for its beauty and its beaches and spend their money, because if they can't get in the water, it's going to be an issue. I think communication, increased communication, we've all talked about that, it's great. Seal culling's not going anywhere because of the Marine Mammal Protection Act. Yeah. But a simple thing that might show people, a very physical, visible thing to show people that we are trying while the technologies come up and all these, because they're not there yet. Yeah. Instead of having a beach full of people this wide with one beach chair in the middle, we just got 4 new beach chairs. Put one at this end, put the old ones at this end. Next year, get 4 new ones for this end. But that way, there's a space in the middle. It gives quicker response times for people such as Arthur, who was kind of towards the fringes, because now there's a chair closer to him. And it would increase our beach budget, but we just found $900 to buy a building we don't know what to do with, for $39,000 to buy 4 new chairs. use the 4 old chairs for this season, buy 4 new chairs for next season. Maybe as drone technology comes up, they each get one. You implement a plan that is visible for people to say, look, but it's not going to, the danger is always going to be there. But we need to send a public message that we are trying visibly. So when families come here, they can be like, well, you know, I see someone, I mean, we call them lifeguards for a reason. Get more of them. Double down.
Good suggestion. That's what we're here for. Yeah.
It's quick and simple. You know, but if we don't show the public that we're doing the best we can, we're going to lose their interest and their money. Just a quick idea.
Good point. Thank you, John.
Hi, I'm Tia Scalcione. I'm a Wellfleet resident. I know many of you, I don't like microphones, don't like speaking in public, but I felt that I wanted to share observations from the last month of the summer in August, where I was at the beach almost daily at Newcomb Hollow, where I usually don't go, with my 2 children who are 9 and 5, who are in love with boogie boarding and in love with the waves, and until now have felt a sense of freedom being in the water. Unfortunately, we were also there the day the attack happened, and my 9-year-old walked straight into it and witnessed what was happening. So lots of conversations in my household, as in every other household, about what happened that day, about processing, about seeing it, about how we move forward. And I just like to say that, you know, during that month alone, watching the number of incidences of run-ins with sharks increase daily, it was a matter of the people who were there daily, families, locals, were changing their protocol for what was safe in the water daily. We were adjusting to the sharks were closer. There were more. The lifeguards that we have are amazing. They were amazing that day. They were amazing all summer. But I think that there needs to be more. I think they need more support. I think that as a citizen, what I tell my son, how can we enjoy this beach again? How can we feel safe in the water? I think we need more eyes, whatever form that is, wherever the money needs to come from. We need more eyes. We need to let people know when they need to get out of water, when there's a threat. And wherever that money needs to come from, it needs to happen. I would say, you know, a specific point is that I would like to see lifeguards increase their hours, the town to fund them till at least 7 or 8 o'clock, because people are still at the beach. There were many times that month that the lifeguards left and we felt like we were just left, that, you know, we had just been pulled out of the water hours before. Is it safe to go back in? There's no one here to advise or to help. We felt very deserted. And I know that, you know, I'm not trying to place any blame, but for me, what I would say based on my observations, increase lifeguard times and over the shoulder seasons, you know, more of a presence. I think it was really hard on Labor Day to see that there was no one there guarding when we all were trying to guard ourselves with the help of the lifeguards who have been there, who weren't working, but they were still actively looking and patrolling. I think the last piece that unfortunately I'm not of the opinion that culling or killing sharks is going to make a difference, and I know that might not be popular, but for my family, what we've talked about is that we have to change the way we interact in the water here. That there's something going on, there's a threat, and what we can control is daily changing the ways we behave in the water based on what's going on. And that's, I think, what we'll plan to do so that we can enjoy the beach. But I appreciate you holding this meeting. I appreciate you listening to everyone, and I hope to see some changes made.
Thank you. Thank you. Well said. Damien?
Damien Parkington, Wellfleet. I think as we consider this going ahead, you kind of got to consider the broader picture of what's going on in the sharks ecosystem. And so I have a few questions as far as shark behavior and its populations. I think that the sharks are certainly modifying their behavior and how they stalk prey here on Cape Cod. I've read a little bit about it, kind of in a sense, you can see it on a daily basis. They're in shallow water, they're in the breakers. What expectation do we have of further modification of how they will stalk their prey? And what expectation do we have of how many sharks to see? It's grown exponentially over the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, I think when the Conservancy started tagging, it was a handful, a dozen the first year, then it was a few dozen. Now we're looking at, 100 sharks spotted in Cape Cod Bay a month ago. I am a commercial fisherman. Some of my friends will see a dozen in a pass over a few square miles. There's a lot. How many more? As we go into discussing how to protect ourselves, and what to do, we need to make sure we're ahead of what may be coming. So if you could answer maybe a little into that.
So regarding their hunting behavior here, you are right that we do have a different area here than in other regions where white sharks occur. So off of South Africa, a lot of people have probably seen the Air Jaws documentaries on Shark Week where they launch themselves out of the water, but they're coming after those seals at depth. So here, as you've noticed and people are aware, they are hunting for seals along the shoreline. And so we're out on the water, as I said, from June to November. In the beginning of our season in June, there aren't that many sharks around. Seals tend to be further out. Once the sharks show up in number, we do see a change in their behavior where the seals tend to hug closer to the shore.
Could you repeat those months?
Oh, sorry, am I not close enough to the microphone?
I just wanted you to repeat which months.
The months.
Are you witnessing the change in behavior?
We start our survey in June, so I can't speak to anything earlier than that. But we've noticed that the end of June, early July, when sharks start to show up and pick a few seals off, that we've noticed a change in behavior, that the seals then tend to hug the shoreline. And that's when the sharks patrol the shoreline, waiting for the seals to come out far enough. So you've mentioned that there seems to be this change in behavior, and I've heard that from a few people this year, but that's what we've seen them doing over the past couple of years. I think part of it is people are more aware of it, and certainly now people are more aware of it and looking for it. There are more sharks coming here. It's not an exponential increase. We do see a lot of the same individuals returning over time. So part of the apparent increase that you mentioned is also early on when we started our research, we weren't out on the water as regularly. When the tagging first started, it happened very sporadically. So part of that is effort driven. We now spend a lot of time out on the water looking for these animals and tracking these animals. But there are more around. But they are certainly capable of changing their behavior. One thing we've seen over the past 2 years is a lot of the smaller white sharks, it seems, have cued into the striped bass fleet and are now have learned that they can pick fish easily off of guys fishing for stripers' lines.
Would you certainly say that the recent increase in sightings in interactions with the sharks is more of a result of their changed behavior and less of a result of their increasing population?
I think it's one part. I think part of it is a change in people's behavior and people being aware that they're here and looking for them. They do hunt for seals in shallow waters close to shore here. As somebody mentioned earlier, most of the time their dorsal fin isn't breaking the surface. They're stealth predators, so people aren't aware that they're there. But we haven't seen any major changes in their predatory behavior. We have had a lot of reports of sightings that people have sent in that have gotten a lot of attention.
Yeah, if I may, there is evidence that the sharks do modify their behavior. Clearly, as indicated by Megan, the charter boat captains, for example, in Cape Cod Bay, they've told me that now, again, when they catch a striped bass, frequently, which caught me by surprise, I didn't think it was so common, but they said frequently, they would find a juvenile white shark chasing the fish, and usually they would end up with half a fish or no fish. So there's an example of a behavior modification to take advantage of the bass that's being stressed because now it's on the hook and being reeled in. Another concern about modified behavior and possible threats to humans would be chumming for white sharks, cage diving, ecotourism, for example. Research that occurs in Massachusetts waters can only occur if I permit it. And the permitting that I do with the advice of my staff and others has to consider the fact that we don't want to permit any research that potentially would modify the behavior of sharks. For example, if there's cage diving tourism, people in cages, chumming from cages, that might make the sharks change their behavior, might make them become more likely to find humans to be a source of food. We don't know that for sure, but still, it's a concern about changed behaviors, so we're very careful with the permitting of research that we do in our waters that is not Division of Marine Fisheries research done in collaboration, for example, with the Conservancy.
Yeah, I understand that, and illegal. I just got to kind of make a statement, I think, after listening to your responses to that. I'm on the water, and I'll be quick, oftentimes up to 100 hours a week. It's noticeable. It's not an interaction change, I believe. I think there's a notable increase in their presence, in their numbers. You hear it from other fishermen. You hear it from, yes, the day boaters who are here maybe looking to have a glimpse. But those people were always here as well, as far as for this conversation, I think it is probably unwise to downplay the population explosion, and I'm a little taken back. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe one of the experts can comment on this, that I heard that we are the only area, or the biggest area, maybe one of the few areas where seals interact so easily with humans, that in most other areas where there's a lot of seals, they stay way offshore, they'll stay off on an island. And that's something I think we're just learning, that they're here and they're sometimes right on the beach right next to you or nearby you. And that's another issue to deal with, but we've kind of talked about that a little bit.
Sure, I can try and address some of that, at least from my experience and perspective from the seal side, so you guys can fill in with the shark side. I grew up in California in Santa Cruz. It's where I learned to surf. It's where I avoided sharks, and I started studying seals. So I have some familiarity with seals and sea lions close to shore where people are. There are different places in the world where those interactions do take place and are close together. In that sense, we're not unique. It does happen. The difference is that those increases in species has happened over the last 30 years. So for us, this is new. And for us, this is a change and a different situation than 3 generations of us have experienced. So it's just something to keep in mind when you think of how different we are. It may have been this way before, but we extirpated everything to the point where it wasn't here and set these laws and regulations for fisheries, for sharks, for seals, for whales, to make sure that they came back into our ecosystem. So there are different places, at least, where seals and humans coexist, and we've learned to just say they're there. We have on the other side of our world, Año Nuevo, Point Reyes National Seashore in California, and that's where I'm familiar with, where we have tons of elephant seals and people and surfers and sea lions. So it's learning to understand this new system and look at those places as examples as to what we need to do. And I can fill in more on after, I guess, what some of those experiences are, but that's my take, at least locally, in terms of the U.S. situations.
Thank you. So we are going to end up running out of time. Not yet. You can come up, Dana. But I can't see how many people are in line. So who's the last person in line right now? So that's only 6 people. Okay, so nobody goes after the lady with the Nauset sweatshirt. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Dana Franchito. I live in Wellfleet. I'm a surfer. I was out in Newcomb Hollow. I was out in the water the day it happened. But I was far away from it. I didn't even know it happened until I got out of the water. But Having said that, I would like to ask a lot of people who have this, what I call, if it moves, kill it mentality. What did you expect the town of Wellfleet or the state of Massachusetts to do? Send Superman out there to the rescue? It doesn't work that way. We're in their habitat. And how do we know those seal numbers aren't coming back to their original numbers as nature intended it before modern humans got on the scene? It's this kind of arrogant, anthropocentric mentality that we're number one on the planet that has created the ecological crisis our Earth is facing now. I mean, I'm scared too. I won't go out, I'll go out there with a lot more caution than I used to. I won't deep dive anymore off my surfboard like I used to when there were no waves. I'm afraid to do that, so I'm being affected by it, and I also hear that killing, even if we could do that, all right? I mean, I hate to bring it up again, I know, but even if we could cull the seal population, which would be inhumane and arrogant, that might create a worse situation. A study in California I read, I guess some man from the National Oceanic, I forget the NOAA, they said if you took the seal population away, they might increase their attacks on humans. Because in California, growing surfing populations, growing seal populations have actually reduced the number of shark attacks on people to 7 a year. And it might be that, we don't know for sure, but it might be that the sharks are learning the difference between seals and people. But I'm really appalled by this arrogant attitude that we have a right to play God in the ocean, given our record on this planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
Hello, my name is Amy Payne. I'm a 17th generation person here on Cape Cod, Wellfleet, now living in Truro. When I heard about this meeting, I was able to do a little bit of research. Presently, there are, in Cape Cod waters alone, up to 50,000 harbor seals and gray seals in our waters and lounging around on our beaches, which is one of the primary foods for great whites. No, you didn't want to hear anything about killing the seals, but back in the 60s, they were hunted and their meat, blubber, and pelts were sold. The pelts make great raincoats and rain boots. The meat was sold to China and Chinatowns throughout this country. Worldwide, there's almost 8 million gray seals and harbor seals. I do believe that some seals should stay on the endangered species list, like the Mediterranean monk seal. There's only about 600 of those left, but I don't believe that the harbor seals and gray seals should remain on the list. And to start the procedures, yes, we have to start at a local level to change the government. Right now, the Marine Mammal Commission, it is a government agency. However, they do not write the regulations. It advises the federal agencies. So we should keep that in mind. I have not been in the ocean or the bay for 2 years now because of the shark attacks. Maybe I'm going to extremes, but that's how I feel. I was amazed to learn that there's 50,000 seals in our waters and on our beaches. Like I said, it does take an active government to change the rules and regulations, but it does start one person, local level. petitions like you mentioned, but something has to be done. We've opened hunting seasons for other animals that got overpopulated, so I don't believe that we should not open a hunting season for these seals that are taking over our environment, eating a lot of our fish, shellfish, lobsters that a lot of people on this end of the Cape rely on for their livelihood, and their feces are polluting our waters. It's just a different avenue to look at.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy Fleischer. I live in Wellfleet, and I've been hearing a lot of people talk about how more eyes on the beach would be a good idea, so I just wanted to respectfully submit a suggestion that we reach out to another community that has dealt with this situation, which is False Bay in Cape Town, South Africa. They had several fatal shark attacks around the year 2000, and they have a large surfing community there. They also have a large number of species of sharks in the area, and they came up with a unique program called Shark Spotters. So they trained disadvantaged South African youth to sit up on the cliffs and look for the sharks. They train them how to find them, and scientific studies have been published showing that that has been effective in reducing shark and human interaction in their community. So reaching out for other models might be a place for us to start.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that one.
So, yeah, I would love to speak to that. Hi, Amy. We actually did fund a scientist from South Africa to come here 3 years ago, meet with the Shark Working Group, and do site visits. So she visited Chatham, Orleans, and then did a flight over the National Seashore, visited Coast Guard Beach to see if it was feasible to run a shark spotter program here. It's definitely a successful program in South Africa, but they have very high cliffs that they're able to put people on. And we don't have the same type of opportunity at most of our beaches here. So we're in communication all the time with scientists from South Africa, scientists on the West Coast that are dealing with the same issues here, to really discuss what is effective in other areas and what we might be able to implement here. So it's a great idea, and we definitely felt the same and made sure that that has happened. One other thing I wanted to say, for the gentleman who said he was concerned that we were downplaying the number of sharks in the area, we definitely are not. For the Conservancy, it is incredibly important to get the information out there to the public about the number of sharks that we're seeing. The Sharktivity app gives the public the ability to put in their own sightings, and so that has been a tremendous asset. Talking about what fishermen are seeing on the water, we actually want to tap into that more so that we are able to get that information. And one thing we didn't talk about today was the research and all of the trips that Megan had talked about are happening on the outer Cape. So we feel from a research perspective, given the amount of information that we are receiving about increasing number of sharks sighted on the bay side, that's important that research take place on the bay side as well. And so the Conservancy is very interested in funding the expansion of the research.
Thank you.
I'm Olaf Alley. I'm a resident here in Wellfleet. I also own the surf shop.
Yeah, more microphone, please.
There we go. I thought everybody else was doing it and it was all their fault. Olaf Alley, resident and own the surf shop in town. I want to, thank the town administrator and everybody for getting this together, and also the town administrator for committing to get that communication up for next season. I think that's a step in the right direction. I'm curious from the shark experts, from your perspective or in your experience, have you seen anything or talked to anybody that's done that is in the development of these shark deterrent systems? So, one of the ones that we carry in the store has very good statistics and research backing it in Australia, South Africa, and in other places in the world. And in fact, the Australian government backs them. I'm just curious if that is that stuff real? Maybe you can speak to that at all, because as well, all this stuff is great, but the main thing that I'm hearing is that we're looking at better, maybe better training, better communication, all this stuff for our season, and maybe even, if we're lucky, extending that season a little bit. But the reality of the matter is that I'm a surfer. I'm going to surf here in September and October and then November. You guys are still tagging sharks in November. So there's nobody else out. And I want to know how I can protect myself in that time. So, one, is this research real, and do you guys believe that there is some backing to that? And then two, would be a question more for the town, or maybe a suggestion, if that's favorable response there, is do you think that there might be a idea or a possibility of local or bigger government doing some sort of funding like the Australian government does, where they give a rebate or a backing back of covering half the cost of the personal shark deterrent system? So, yeah.
So I have been doing research online about the shark deterrents, and as you mentioned, the Australian government does recommend one and gives a rebate. There actually was a great piece of information that came out from Shark Spotters recently, where they tested multiple shark deterrents, and the same deterrent that the Australian government endorses had the most success in their testing. But what they highlight is that still 40% of the time the sharks did go to the bait, so it was baited testing. So it's just something to keep in mind. I would say the one that has the highest success would be the one, if you're going to invest in something you would want to use, but you have to recognize that it is not a guarantee of safety. But I have...
I'm not looking for a guarantee. I mean, 60% sounds really good.
Yeah, right. So it is the same one that the Australian government...
To that research, I think a lot of us would love to see that ourselves, but in some of the research that I've done in looking into that, it seemed like a lot of those testing programs, a lot of the interactions that came to place was more of a third time or a second or a third, fourth time the same shark reapproaching that dummy or whatever test object. It wasn't to the fourth time that interaction actually happened. I don't know if that's true, or if is that in that study, or if you know.
I read the same with the Australian study, but the Shark Spotter program, I'm not exactly sure the repeats. I have everything printed out here, and you're welcome to take this with you so that you have this information. We have a great network of contacts and would be happy to connect you to people to be able to discuss firsthand with them what they saw in that testing.
Can I ask you a question? There are many surfers here, and surfers are a great source of information. I've been told by many surfers that they're out there and they see the sharks go onto the boards. I think it would be useful for us to have, not necessarily now, but conversation with surfers at some point in time to get surfers' impressions as to the encounters they have had, meaning they've seen them, but there's been no attack. What were the surfers doing at the time or not doing, so we can get a better understanding as to surfers' behavior in terms of maybe interaction with the sharks. So that's something I'd like, that's the kind of information I would like to get from surfers or paddle boarders as we move forward. It'll help give us a better understanding of what might trigger an attack, because obviously many surfers have been out there and they have not been attacked.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to know that.
Yeah,
what made those things differently. And there was one other question too for the SEAL expert here. I've noticed through the years, I'm sure that many of us have noticed, in the last few years especially, seals don't get spooked by us anymore. It used to be you would, come under, duck dive under a wave or something, you paddle through and a seal would pop up and you would just look at it, it'd scare away. Eventually it became like I'd start to bark at them and that would scare them away. Now, I mean, yesterday when I was surfing, I came up and barked at a seal. It just looked at me. It's only, a few feet away. It just looked at me. I just kept paddling. And so I'm definitely seeing, I don't know, is that just they're becoming accustomed to us, or is there something that we can do differently to spook them?
I love this information. It's fantastic. And this is a community that can give all of us a lot of information on the behaviors of these animals. So thank you. I don't know. I don't know what the difference is. These are some of the questions that I think as a community we should all try and figure out and come talk to us, come talk to the consortium, all of us working in different capacities who do behavior studies. We have people who are experts in behavior who might be able to answer those questions. I do know, though, and to put this there, that the more interactions humans have with wildlife in general, the more accustomed they are, and seals are no different. So it's really important to keep your distance from wildlife. Don't feed wildlife, don't feed seals. And the consequences of other people doing those things can come back to surfers. So something to consider if you're on a beach or you see an animal, don't habituate them to people, whatever you do. It's really important because you are on the water. So just kind of keep that in the back of everybody's head. But I'm not sure, and I don't know, but I imagine when I used to surf off the Coast Guard and Nauset Light, and I stopped because there were sharks, they would come up to us and they would kind of poke their heads up and then go away. So I haven't been back since, so let me know.
One more.
Just as far as do we think as a town that our town government that if some of us start to invest in these systems, do you think that what is the process to try and develop some sort of system where, because the system that we're talking about that does have scientific backing and pretty good statistics is very expensive. It's like retails for like $4.99. So do you think that there is some sort of way to create funding, or is there an open opportunity to that, or what?
So what I would like to see, because of David and Andrea, I would love to see surfers, off hours, off seasons, get a group together, give them the personal experience you guys have had. And and as far as the devices go, the deterrents go, I don't know, come up with names, come up with prices, and I don't know anything about them, but maybe you could talk to them and see what you come up, wholesale prices or something, and then we could come up with something too. Maybe the government has some money for us. I don't know.
I would
government people over there.
Maybe I'll follow up with that later. But
Yeah, I know.
just to be
I've got
aware of
Katie's
that.
number and stuff, and you could give me your number, email, and I've got some other people's phone numbers, so that would be great to continue this.
Please consider stopping by Town Hall and talking to me. I'd love to talk to you about it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good. Thank you all.
I'll be very brief. Bob Wagner, part-time resident here in Wellfleet. You mentioned earlier that you have heard from the Lieutenant Governor and from the local senator. I'd like to follow up on something that someone said a few minutes ago. We're not the only beach community with a large surfing population that has a shark problem, and great white sharks at that. And so I hope when you have this consortium of communities up and down the Cape that you're reaching out to Santa Cruz, to San Clemente, to San Francisco and Ocean Beach, and looking into what they're doing in Australia, in South Africa, whether it's the spotters or buoy systems. And I would encourage you, if you're reaching out to Lieutenant Governor and to the state senator, that the Mass Cultural and Tourism Board, it would behoove them, and they have funding for initiatives like this that may allow you to look at what other communities are doing to the extent that you can keep anyone safe in the water with a predator like a great white. But other people are dealing with this and have been dealing with it, and we should be looking to them, whether it's spotters. I was in San Clemente last April and got chased out of the water by a patrol boat that was there just for that reason. We know the spotter planes, the surfers, we see the spotter plane, we know they're there for a reason, and we see your boats. Sometimes you chase people out of the water, but if there's a more coordinated effort there, and the spotter plane can be in touch with the lifeguards, that's a drone right there, one extra drone that's up there. And so I'm not sure if that's what other communities are doing, but I would look beyond our just immediate community for ideas, because other people have been dealing with this for years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Evie Rose. I go to Nauset. I live in Wellfleet, and I have more of a statement than a question, but I just kind of wanted to echo Dana's point, and I think that every time anyone enters our oceans on Cape, they're making a conscious decision. I've been swimming here since I was tiny, and I understand that whenever I choose to get in the water, I'm opening the possibility of an encounter with a shark. It's been established multiple times tonight that as of right now, nothing can be done about killing seals or sharks. Even if there weren't laws protecting them, I think it's inhumane and irresponsible to assume that the only solution is to eliminate parts of our marine life on Cape. Sharks and seals have more of a right to the oceans than we do. We cannot invade their environment and decide to kill them simply for existing. All we can do is research and educate about these interactions. ATVs, radios, more lifeguards on the off seasons, and drones are all reasonable and necessary additions to our beaches. I think that we as humans who want to swim need to reevaluate our position here and realize that we cannot control the ocean. We can, however, control our own actions and how we behave at the beach. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we only have about 10 minutes left. So if the experts and Chief Pauly or Chief Facette have anything to say, I'd like to hear from them first.
If I may, Madam Chairman, thank you. I know this is an emotional issue. I know that this situation has had a very big impact on not only Wellfleet, but the Cape community. In talking with the beach director, there's a couple of things that we'd like to implement, and we're actually looking for your help in that. First of all, sometime in the beginning of October, we will be starting a Stop the Bleed program. This is a class program that has a lot of success, and myself and Ms. Thomas will be working on that. So look for that information. We'll get out on social media, through the local media, through the town website. But we want to do a couple of classes initially in October, so anyone, and this will be open to the public, obviously. The second thing is we've had a lot of outreach. We've received an awful lot of telephone calls. I know that there are people in this room tonight that were part of the event on September 15th in that tragedy. We have a gentleman who'll be coming onto Cape sometime in the beginning of October. We're still trying to get the logistics down. His name is Dr. Peter Levine. He basically is a psychiatrist and an expert in dealing with stress and trauma, in particular critical incident stress. He's been doing this for over 40 years. He's a world-renowned expert. So what we're going to try to do is, again, set up a forum, if you will, or set up a location. He's offered to meet with anyone for a couple of hours, and we'll get that information out there if people feel the need that they'd like to talk to someone, or at least share their experience, however negative it was, however heart-wrenching it was. But I can tell, I know people have been affected by this. So again, please just be on the lookout for that information, because we'll get it out to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else down there? Okay. Can we hear any comments from the select board? I think Kathleen wanted to go first.
Okay.
Kathleen wanted to go first.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My name is Kathleen Bacon. I've written a statement. Just very briefly, for those of us who have lived here for several decades, you may, like myself, may consider yourself a naturalist and environmentalist. For many of us, it's the reason we settled here. This immensely beautiful place has always been captivating, as Henry David Thoreau attests in his writing of the Cape Cod lands. But many of us have become increasingly aware that the natural environment that surrounds us has been changing. For quite some time now, we have been seeing warmer water temperatures in the ocean. With those warmer waters, an abundant seal population has been thriving. and those thriving seals have learned an apex predator who also thrives here. One is completely dependent on the other. The word solution is a misnomer. It offers a false sense of security, and we should not kid ourselves in thinking we will have the upper hand in dealing with nature. Compromise is the word we should use going forward in the future. We need to be keenly aware of the nature that is around us, and we need to adhere to a protocol of safety and caution when recreating in the water. We have lost a liberty, an innocence, and a sense of abandon that one feels diving into the great Atlantic. We are entering an era that will require mindfulness and caution. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to say something that hasn't been directly addressed yet. I'm 70. I've swum every year of my life in Newcomb Hollow, and most of the time there were no lifeguards. And I swam not just in the summer season. I swam after school when it got cooler, and the person that watched out for me was my mother. And the thing that hasn't been brought up here is this is a community effort to look at the water, not space out, and pay the kind of attention that our species and a lot of other species have been paying for hundreds of thousands of years. If we think there's a predator out there, if we think there's going to be danger, maybe just a riptide, not a predator, we have to be aware of it. Yes, we need to do more things as a town, but as a community, including people who just come here for the summer, we need not to be afraid, but to tag on to what Kathleen Bacon said. We need to do it together. You don't just hand the safety measures and the spotting to officials. You don't go swimming alone. I'm going to start taking one of those little stretchy tourniquets to the beach. It would be great if surfers had them inside their suits. That's an idea. But let's remember that most of the accidents and fatalities that happen because of us driving cars. It's frightening. And in that way, we all know we have to watch out on the road. So we now have to do it at the beach. We need to watch the people in the water and the water the way my mother watched me when I was a child. So I've listened to everything you've said myself, and I'm sure we all have. I've taken notes, and I hope to address this at more meetings for the select board so we can see where to move forward. Good, thank you. All right. Does Representative Peak there you are, want to say anything, please? And is Leslie still here? Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief because the night has been long for a lot of the people who are sitting here. Thank you for recognizing me. I came tonight primarily to listen and to hear the suggestions, and I'm joined by Leslie Sandberg from Senator Sears' office as well, his senior advisor. I came here tonight to listen to the citizens of Wellfleet and the Outer Cape, and although we're meeting in Wellfleet, I would emphasize that this is an issue that is regional in nature. It is not just a Wellfleet issue or a Truro issue or a Chatham issue. This is a regional issue. And for that reason, the entire Cape delegation, stretching from Vinnie DiMacedo's district, and he lives in Plymouth, all the way to Senator Sears' district, who lives in Truro, and the end of my district, and I live at the end of the line in Provincetown. All of us and all of the representatives representing the Cape and Islands got together last week because we know if we speak with a united voice on behalf of the region, we will be able to make requests as you develop your plans for things like ATVs, increased telecommunication, whatever our public safety officials need, working with the Cape Cod Chamber and others to develop effective messaging so that the word does get out and people understand what the dangers are as well as what the opportunities are. I think that moving forward, we are relatively well-positioned because we have the White Shark Conservancy that's been doing research for the past 5 years. And this young woman sitting at the end of the table, she has GPS coordinates for every shark that they have seen along the back beach for the last 5 years. And you know what? NOAA has mapping of what the seafloor looks like on the back beach. And we can do, working in a coordinated way, and Congressman Keating's office is working on this, we can merge those two data sets to gain a better understanding and to let science help drive the decisions that we make as we move along. Dr. Pierce and I have sat next to each other at the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission for close to a decade. It's wonderful that he is here tonight because I think what we're going to need, what you'll need help funding, is public safety measures that we've talked about this evening, as well as ongoing scientific research. We really can't do one without the other, and I may be the person that's at your meeting tonight, but I can assure you I am speaking on behalf of the entire delegation. We speak as one voice, representatives and senators, Democrats and Republicans. It doesn't matter. We are united on this, and we are going, by God, to give you our best in these efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you all for coming, and if you have questions later, be it tomorrow or the coming weeks or so, just email, go on the website, Town of Wellfleet website, and get the Board of Selectmen or the Town Administrator's email, and more suggestions too. Thank you.
I didn't put much down, I was